Awesome as always, Mr. Brunt, and his longtime Montreal columnist Dave Stubbs said today, the loss of Lafleur has cut a hole in Quebec's heart forever. So much so the Premier offering a state funeral if the family so chooses. There are legends, there are icons. Guy Lafleur may have been both, as is our next guest, a former teammate and friend of Lafleur. Ken Dryden joins me now. Welcome back to the show, Ken. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks, Tim.
I know there are a lot of folks talking about the hockey player, but you knew the man. Tell us a little bit about the man.
Well, Guy was a small town kid. I mean, he grew up in Thurso, on the north shore of the Ottawa River between Montreal and Ottawa, and I'm not sure that he ever he became. He lived the sophisticated life of Montreal, and but I don't know that he was ever not a small town kid. And as natural as he seemed to be, and as he earned himself to be on the ice, I think he had to really work at it off the ice. That he was shy, and focused, and he absolutely understood his responsibility. And if you were a member of the Montreal Canadiens in the 1970s, you knew you had a responsibility. I mean, the Canadiens by that time had become the legendary Canadiens after winning 5 in a row in the late 1950s, and then winning often in the 60s, and then into the 70s. And Guy Lafleur was the best player on that best team. Mm-hmm. And he absolutely was along the line of Rocket Richard and Jean Béliveau, and then he was next. And everyone knew it. The fans knew it. The media knew it. It was talked about. It was assumed. It was all as if it had been predetermined. And so he was going to have to carry that with him. And I'm not sure that the third in line, that role isn't the hardest of all, because there are now 15 years of expectations that have been created, 15 years of appetite that is there, and he's going to have to find a way of fulfilling that. And as well as that, as the best player, you have all of that focus of attention off the ice. And in Montreal, there was far more off the ice focus than in any other city, including in Toronto. Yeah. And even though it was before a time of all sports radio and all sports TV, Montreal had, I think, 6 daily newspapers at the time, 4 in French, 2 in English. There were all the radio stations, both in French and in English, the TV stations in French and in English, and every one of them had sports departments. And if you had a sports department, your job was to cover the Canadiens. And so the most visible person is the best player, and the most visible player anyway is Guy, because that's how he plays. Yeah. And he took that on, and it was not easy, but he carried it.
Mary Lemieux called him larger than life, and it seemed from afar that he had that presence, but also, Ken, that rare touch of having the presence. I say special players make special plays on special days, but he also had the rare touch of having the humility to go with it. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that again, it goes back. I think he was that small town kid. He grew up in really modest circumstances, right. And I don't think that ever left him entirely. And in Montreal, in order to play on those teams, you had to be a little bit humble, because you just looked up in the rafters and you see the retired jerseys of players that were heroes of your own when you were growing up. And you knew that no matter how good you were going to be, or how good you were never going to be as good as they were. And that was the nature of life with the Canadiens. Guy Lafleur, no matter how good he was never going to be the Rocket. He knew that. Larry Robinson knew he was never going to be Doug Harvey. Toe Blake or Scotty Bowman knew he was never going to be Toe Blake.
Right.
That's what was in our minds. And so, you had a responsibility. You had a responsibility to yourself to live up to what was in you. And you were also competing against not only the other team on the ice, but competing against legendary figures, which of course, the longer you don't play, the more legendary you become.
Right.
And so if Guy had ever pretended that he was the Rocket or better than the Rocket, I mean, nobody would have accepted that. But it wasn't in his nature anyway. I mean, he knew he was a star and had to be a star, but he had no sense of privilege about him. He didn't carry himself around and strut like a star.
Right. For the generations that didn't see him in his prime, what made him special on the ice?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people have talked a lot today about his hair.
Yeah.
and in part because before a helmet, you could see hair, but also in part because it was kind of the embodiment of him on the ice, because his hair looked different from other people's hair because he moved fast enough that it streamed out the back. Yeah. But to me, what was more interesting about his hair was not when it was in full stream. It was when it flipped up just at the beginning, because that was the sign he was on his way. That as soon as you could see it at the end start to flip, it was like, oh boy, here it comes. And so, you had a team like the Canadiens that was the fastest team in the league. And here you had an electric player on the most electric team in the most electric building and for a decade. And so it was just, it was just fun. It was noise. It was excitement. And he was, that there are a lot of great players on those teams, but he was he was the punctuation point of that.
I know folks in Quebec and beyond may understand his cultural impact, but for those on the outside looking in, is there a way to describe what he meant to a generation of hockey fans and players in Quebec?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from the place of hockey and of the Montreal Canadiens in the province of Quebec, and to the Quebec culture and the French language, and of course it did start with the Rocket, and I mean, one of the things that I didn't understand when I was in Montreal, and not even until not that many years ago, but that there weren't very many French Canadian players in the National Hockey League until the 1950s, and almost no stars. I mean, even names that I always assumed, were Quebecers, of Nuzi Lalonde and Frank Boucher. They were from Ottawa, or they were from other parts of Ontario. And that the Rocket was really the first great Quebec Francophone star. And that as people have described of how, he kind of, he carried the hopes and expectations of a people, which sounds far overblown, it's pretty close to being true. I mean, and so many people who grew up, who were kids during the era of the Rocket, went on to very prominent roles in Quebec culture, in Quebec politics, and that they cite the Rocket as being a really important figure in their growing up and their sense of pride. Well, then the Rocket gets older and retires, and so then Beliveau, and then Guy Lafleur, and so And it's a really hard. I mean, the Rocket would have none of those kind of comparisons, or when people would tell stories about how important he was to the Quebec people, it was like, I'm a hockey player. That's what I do. And Jean Beliveau, I think, had an awareness of both. I mean, he knew that he was a hockey player, but he also knew he had some larger effect. He was very good off the ice as well as on the ice. Guy, I think he understood his importance, and was that kind of natural on the ice.
Right.
But off the ice, he had to really work at being what he knew he needed to be, and that larger figure. And it was, again, as I said earlier, that's not an easy thing to do and to carry, and he did it.
And he did it with class, and he did it with dignity, and he learned how to do it so well that an entire generation of Quebecois players now cite him as that guy. Ken, I want to thank you for the perspective we never would have been able to bring to a day like this, as per usual. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Not at all. Thanks a lot, Tim.
There is the legendary Ken Dryden on the life of Guy Lafleur.